question did you come up with, inspired by Travis being on tonight?
What movie couldn't be made today?
So this is an interesting one, right? Because people will always gravitate to something like Blazing Saddles and say that.
Oh no, that's what my brain went immediately. Yeah,
and I get that, but the thing with Blazing Saddles is you could still make it today.
I think
you just wouldn't make it the same way. Mel Brooks, if he were, I mean, he is still alive, but if he were in his prime, if he were doing that today, he would do the same type of movie. He would just do it differently.
The messaging would have to be different to reach today's generation, but it'd have the same.
Oh, sure. Sure, absolutely. But that's the beauty of comedy. It's hard to say, right? Because movies are such a time capsule of when they're made. Even timeless movies still have the stamp of when they were made on them, and there's no way around that. So it's impossible.
Even look at Gone with the Wind. There's scenes in there that people
sure,
complain
absolutely.
about nowadays, and I consider that a timeless movie.
Yeah, anything can be both timeless and a product of its time. And it's an unfair thing to say, well, you just couldn't make that movie today. Because no, you wouldn't make it that way. It's like the debate. I'm also a big basketball and baseball fan, and you get that all the time, of the greatest of all time. And Babe Ruth couldn't play baseball today because he would get, no, you can't just pluck, Babe Ruth out of 1932, drop him in today and say, go play baseball, because it's not the same world. It's not the same environment. Just like you couldn't take Shohei Ohtani from today, drop him into 1927 and expect that, because there wasn't going to be somebody throwing 100 miles an hour back then, except for maybe Walter Johnson. But anyway.
But you could absolutely drop Michael Jordan into today's basketball and he'd still be the GOAT.
So, but that's the thing, right? Like, he's an exception to a rule, because like him and Kobe Bryant, they had a different gear that they could go to, where like Michael Jordan wanted to beat you at anything and everything. It doesn't matter what it is. Like, if you busted out tiddlywinks, he wanted to beat you in that and just drive you into the ground for it. And that's the thing, is like, you have to look at eras and you have to look at sort of how you would do stuff. So for me, I can't say there's a single movie that couldn't be made today, because there's a whole just ton of movies that wouldn't get made today. A good example. Yeah, I mean, a great example is a movie like Murder by Death. I don't know if either of you have ever seen or heard that one.
I've heard of it, but I haven't seen it.
It's a great spoof film, but it is
great. Film. It's a parody film, but it is like, think of Clue. It's that kind of a movie. It's that murder mystery, but it's a spoof. It's making fun of murder mysteries. Yes. But you wouldn't make... Yeah, Agatha Christie stuff, Sherlock Holmes, all of that. Yeah. You wouldn't make that movie today the way that they did, because you have Peter Sellers in that movie playing a spoof of Charlie Chan.
Yeah, that's
now, if you take it through the lens of they were making fun of the fact that Charlie Chan was always portrayed by a white actor, it works, but surface level, it doesn't read well. So like, that's the kind of thing that couldn't get done today, because it wouldn't be done today. Like Fisher Stevens was the character Ben in Short Circuit and Short Circuit 2. Fisher Stevens is not Indian, but he was playing an Indian character. I have seen interviews with him talk about, you know what? I took the job because I was 20, I needed work. They asked if I could do the accent. I worked on it. He lived with an Indian family for several months before Short Circuit 2 to like really work on the character. But he's like, if somebody came to me today and asked me the same thing, I wouldn't do it. Or if I were doing that now, I wouldn't, because he understands the difference in that. But at the time, it was just acting. So it's like, that question is always so loaded, because you could make just about any movie today. Maybe Birth of the Nation. That might be the one I would say.
I don't know that one.
Yeah, neither do I.
It's white.
Yeah,
it's some white supremacy stuff. No, it's hard to say like a single movie. But what about you, Charles?
I could say two. You're right. It's hard to say a single movie. I can tell you two right now. One is Ernest Scared Stupid, because nobody should have greenlit that script for any reason ever. I love Ernest films, but that thing was bad. All
right, so we're going to disagree on that, because
horror film. But even
I do, but I also that is honestly my favorite Ernest film. Is Scared Stupid.
Really?
Now, some of that is a nostalgia factor because I saw it a lot as a kid, but it's just the right brand of dumb and hilarious, and it's got Eartha Kitt in it. It's got jokes that I still quote today. Steven and I, our friend Steven and I will quote that movie back and forth. So yeah, anyway, sorry, go on.
What about Frankenweenie?
They have made that today. They remade that.
And they shouldn't. It was so bad the first time, and just as bad, maybe a little better the second time. Joe?
The first thing that comes to my mind is one that I'm kind of doubting Charles has ever seen, and I don't know Travis well enough to know whether he'd seen it. 7 Brides for 7 Brothers.
I've heard of that one. I have not actually watched it.
I know bits of it. I'm aware of the music more than I am of
same.
And I had to pause for a second, but I realized because I worked up audio for a local theater for a little while when I was younger, but it was Oklahoma. They did Oklahoma, not 7 Brides.
Yeah, I mean it's 70 years old, but these 7 brothers basically kidnap 7 brides and Stockholm syndrome them for a winter until they want to they all get married. So,
yeah, that's a little rough. I mean, there's definitely a lot of stuff like that. There's a lot of things in movies and television that would be done completely differently today.
Yeah. Well, even like some of the stuff in, say, Rush Hour, you were talking about scenes that couldn't be made. There's definitely some scenes in there that I think nowadays people would be a lot more critical of, with just the different racial jokes and things like that. Or even The Ringer, where he pretends to be a person with a mental illness to fix the Special Olympics.
Although to that movie's credit, it does not punch down. And that is important to note, is comedy that doesn't punch down can work.
So punching down, Joe, when they make fun of something that they shouldn't.
Yeah, like midgets.
Getting canceled, sir. Getting canceled. You have to say midgets.
I'm sorry.
There's a Borderlands reference.
Small people. Even like, the Ringer still has my favorite F-bomb in any PG-13 movie.
Mm-hmm.
It's
so good.
Did we get ice cream?
Yeah.
I laughed so hard at that moment.
And it was ad-libbed. That's the best part of it.
Yeah.
I think this is a good hybrid film because nobody would make it today. Right, brand spanking new, because one, Johnny Knoxville and the TV show / team Jackass, so we don't get censored. But it was in its heyday. Now they're not, right? So they definitely couldn't do it, and I don't think anybody else would greenlight it. But what I do love about that film is what Travis was talking about. It's not just the punching up; it celebrated all the other people in the film, and the person pretending was the villain of the film who was trying to be the hero, and it was it was pointing out the fallacies of it, and then that's one of the best improv death bombs ever.
And the way it wrapped up was perfect given the setup. I'm not gonna. I mean, if you haven't seen it yet, you haven't seen it yet. But I'm not gonna spoil it. Just
wait,
now.
You haven't seen? There's a show about that.